Graham Bond, a musical magus. Graham Bond was a musical pioneer whose innovative approach fusing modern jazz with rhythm and blues took music to a bombastic, stratospheric level with his band the Graham Bond Organization. Born October 28, 1937, he was adopted from Dr. Bernardo's orphanage in March 1938 and moved to the suburbs of London. As a child, he had a cantankerous nature and offbeat sensibility, which would be a foreshadowing of where his inclinations would lead. He was educated at the Royal Liberty School. Bond developed an early musical aptitude. At 6 he began learning the piano, and by age 9 had gained an advanced understanding. Although he began by studying classical composers, soon he became spellbound by jazz, and in 1953 convinced his headmaster to allow him to start a school jazz band. Additionally, Bond began playing the trombone, but by 1954 had switched to the saxophone, having been attracted by jazz greats Charlie Parker and Stan Getz. By 1956, he acquired enough skill on the alto saxophone to be in the Terry Graham Trio. Graham had a unique approach on the alto sax and played in an unconventional manner in a style similar to Eric Dolphy. He played with an emotion-fueled, innovative method which sometimes met with mixed reactions. In May 1961, he joined the Don Rendell Quintet. Bond contributed the song "Bring Back the Birch" to their album Roaring. Graham played alongside Dick Heckstall-Smith in a band which was a musical extension of the avant-garde magazine New Departures. It also featured Jack Bruce on stand-up bass. The band was an innovative melding of live poetry with jazz. They played small performances at college campuses and beat clubs. Bond continued performing with this band until 1965. He then shared a flat with avant-garde pianist Mike Taylor in Richmond, a London suburb. Taylor had performed with Baker and Bruce in the early 1960s. Dick Heckstall-Smith joined Alexis Corners Blues Incorporated in June 1962 and brought Graham along. Ginger Baker, Long John Baldry, and Jack Bruce were already members of the band. Bond eventually switched to the Hammond organ, which gave him more dimension and sound. Alexis agreed to let Bond perform on the Hammond with Baker and Bruce between sets, which went over so well that it sparked the idea in Bond that he could be leading a band of his own. In March 1963, after a heated exchange with Corner, Bond informed his bandleader that he was leaving the band and would be taking Baker and Bruce in tow. The first incarnation of the Graham Bond Organization consisted of Bond on Hammond organ, alto saxophone and vocals, Jack Bruce on bass guitar, double bass and vocals, Ginger Baker on drums, and John McLaughlin on guitar, whose technical prowess is displayed on the song Doxy. Soon McLaughlin was out of the band and was replaced by Dick Heckstall-Smith on the tenor saxophone. The members were expressive and adept on their instruments. Bond became a unifying bandleader, and the organization were a tight, well-oiled machine, their performances bringing a dynamic intensity to the stage. The organization were signed to EMI and recorded 2 albums which were released in 1965, The Sound of 65 and There's a Bond Between Us. These were both influential albums which evolved and developed a fusion of modern jazz and rhythm and blues. Bond played with a fervent driving rhythm. The music was a complex interaction between players, and the songs were compelling and exceptionally tight. Both albums were high watermarks in musical synthesis and were influential to fellow musicians of the mid-60s. However, they only sold modestly and achieved minor success in the charts. Graham sang in a low register with a gravelly timbre. He donned a horseshoe mustache and was an imposing, over-the-top personality. Bond was one of the first musicians to play the mellotron. The organization lacked any significant commercial breakthrough, despite the raw energy of their live appearances. The 1964 album, Live at Cluck's Cleek, captures the explosive dynamism of their live performance. They appeared in the film Gonsko Beat, playing the song Harmonica. The 1965 single, Love Comes Shining Through, was an exceptional composition years ahead of its time. The GBO single, Waltz for a Pig, was written for Pete Townsend, included on the B-side of a Who single. Dismayed by the lack of success at this juncture, Bruce and Baker began to explore other venues. Ginger briefly played with John Mayall's Bluesbreakers, and while in this band connected with Eric Clapton. Eric expressed to Ginger that he had tired of the Mayall format and wanted to pursue a new band composed of himself and Baker on the condition that Jack Bruce would join on bass and vocals. Pete Brown also joined as the band's lyricist, helping catapult them to success with his evocative surrealist lyrics. Graham was devastated by the loss of two integral band members and felt his fleeting opportunity of success slipping away. The manager of the Graham Bond organization had been Robert Stigwood, who suddenly dropped ties with Bond and became the manager of Cream, as the trio came to be known. Bond then gathered unreleased tracks which were subsequently released as the album Solid Bond. His heroin dependence worsened as a result of his loss. He also began to pursue a burgeoning, ever-deepening interest in the occult. After returning from a trip to Ireland, he was thoroughly cognizant of the symbology and methodology of the tarot. Graham then became musical director of the band The Fool, a Dutch art collective that needed assistance for their album, which was to be released on Apple Records. Graham's next move was to travel with his wife to America, settling in Los Angeles. He spent time jamming with Jefferson Airplane, Jimi Hendrix, and the Grateful Dead. While in America, he released two albums on Pulsar, Love is the Law and Mighty Graham Bond. On both albums his name was misspelled with an added E at the end of Graham. Love is the Law was recorded with Hal Blaine on drums, his wife Diane on backup vocals, and Graham on everything else. The title reflected Bond's promulgation of the magical writings of Aleister Crowley. Bond was expressing a sincere interest in the Crowleyan philosophy in the establishment of the law of Thelema as a viable magical approach following the mystery school tradition. Mighty Graham Bond, released in 1969, was a heavier affair featuring the song Freaky Beak. The spoken word intro appears to be William S. Burroughs. Similar to Crowley, Bond was unable to gain a foothold with his artistic endeavors in America. No financial support was forthcoming for his expenses, so he and Diane were forced to return to London. Bond studied the writings of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, compiled by Israel Regardie. He was an accomplished student of the occult who delved deeply and ruminated on esoteric symbology and magical practice. His several albums dealing with the occult featured material on the Kabbalah and magical philosophy of Aleister Crowley. He espoused the belief that he might be the illegitimate child of Crowley. He also studied the Enochian language and incorporates it in several songs. Bond stated his position on the radio show Top Gear after the song Love is the Law concluded. There is a great deal of interest in this country today, especially among the rock groups, in what is called Magick, and certain groups have been getting a lot of publicity over black magic, which I know to be an extremely dangerous thing to dabble in. Myself, I am dedicated to what is known as holy magic or transcendental magic, and that song you heard just then is like a hymn to Aquarius, if you can understand my meaning. We are trying to do something about making the world a bit better, not worse. Bond's magical name was Lashtal, which was Crowley's word symbolizing the 93 current. Bond went on to record two more magical-themed albums, Holy Magic and We Put Our Magic on You, which featured future Gentle Giant drummer John Pugwash Weathers on drums. He felt the imperative to transmit the magical philosophy in an attempt to bring unity to the world and help people to function on a more spiritual plane. To quote Bond, "On the front is a silver five-pointed star or pentagram with a red circle in the middle. This star, with one point uppermost, is a most ancient holy symbol representing man in the divine state. In magic, it is the highest symbol of good, or mind over matter. Reversed, it is an intensely evil sign and should never be drawn this way. In this age always represents Aquarius and the star Sirius, and also the order of the silver star. Underneath is the maxim, love is the law, love under will. On the back is the hexagram or six-pointed star, and as the pentagram means the little universe or man, so this represents the greater universe or macrocosm. Between them we represent all that exists. The word tarot stands for the great system of magic and science handed down to us in secret for generations. Around the outside the figures represent eagle, Scorpio, water, cups, lion, Leo, fire, wands, bull, Taurus, earth, pentacles, man, Aquarius, air, swords. All this should be meditated upon, for they have been used with success by hundreds of people throughout the ages. In fact, the symbols on this cover and the tattwa or elemental signs on the inside constitute the keys to practical high magic. However, a word of caution: the methods described work, but no one should attempt to get out of their head unless they know what they are doing. On our first album, Holy Magic, we gave on the title track an example of the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, and this should always be used before you get out of your head, or body for that matter. The fact that thousands of people have used this through the ages makes it a potent protection on the physical, astral, and mental planes. The elemental symbols are extremely ancient and can be used as doors or gateways to other planes of consciousness. Yellow square, earth; red triangle, fire; indigo egg, spirit; silver crescent, water; blue disc, air. In 1969, Bond teamed up with Ginger Baker in his newly founded band, Ginger Baker's Air Force. It was a return to form for Graham. The Air Force performance of 12 Gates of the City on Beat Club shows Bond's commanding, magical presence and is one of his best live performances. He headed the Air Force horn section, which consisted of 3 saxophone players, and gave the music a rhythmical, larger-than-life sound. Air Force produced 2 double albums showcasing their live performances, but Ginger was unable to sustain the monumental task of maintaining this structure. And despite the public accolades, he faced the inevitable and ended the band. As Bond got deeper into the occult, he came face to face with his shadow self. Faced with doubt and despondence at the inability to gain an audience by sharing the esoteric philosophy, and unable to quell his narcotic cravings, his life began a downward spiral which gained momentum. In an unfortunate turn of events, Graham Bond met his end at Finsbury Park on the tracks of an underground train station in North London. It was May 8, 1974, and Bond had only been 36 years old. His song, Moving Toward the Light, is a pertinent epitaph of Graham's spiritual bond. Lord knows I've had some troubles. Lord knows I've had a few. But without those heartaches, baby, I wouldn't have known what to do. Yeah, 'cause I'm moving. Yes, I'm moving. Lord knows I'm grooving towards the light. I'm just like a child. Yeah, moving, said I'm moving. Moving towards the light, forevermore. 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 I'm moving towards the light. Forevermore with you, my love. Forevermore with you, my love.